get you with a tour guide and then get you on your way.
Alright, so my name's Robbie. I will be your 10 tour guide. As we pass through here, we're celebrating Prairie du Sac's 30th year, so if you'd like and you're above the age of 21, feel free to grab a glass of wine and go along the route. If you can collect your tickets in this little barrel bin here, that'd be great. And when you're all ready, you can grab your glass of pumpkin bean.
Now, is that just going to be for wine?
Al, it's time. Al, your ticket. You have to put your ticket in there.
You guys want some grape juice? Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
And when you get your glass, we're going to be heading down the stairs. You can follow me this way.
Are we supposed to follow him? Or
Yes. Yep.
Just spread out wherever you can. Stop right here for a moment.
So the winery runs all year round?
We are open 365 days a year. During the winter, there's not as much activity outside, obviously, but we find things to do. There's wine to be moved around constantly, varying ages periods. So.
Sure. Yeah.
My sons never got hurt playing football. I had 5 of them.
Oh, 5 boys?
Yeah. 4 girls.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the majority of the people probably will get started. So
I'll move away from the stairway here.
full tour right after that.
Get your practice right away.
Yeah.
I think.
All right, we'll get started here. Welcome to Wollershiem Winery's open house. My name is Robbie. I am your tour guide for today. A little bit brief history about the winery. It was originally founded in 1840s by wine pioneer Augustin Herazzi. He came here from his homeland of Hungary, claimed that this land reminded him a lot of his homeland. Came here, dug out the back portion of our historic cave, helped incorporate sock, and tried his hand at planting vines here for a few seasons. Unfortunately, he did not anticipate how cold it does get here in the winter, and his vines did not fare very well. He then moved to California, where it's a lot easier to grow vines out there, had a lot more success, and is considered the father of California viticulture. After he left, the Peter Kale family purchased the property in the 1850s. They operated the winery for 3 generations, making wine and brandy, until about 1899. There was a very cold winter, really bad freeze, killed off a lot of the vines, followed by Prohibition. That kind of halted the wine production on property for a while, until it was purchased in 1972 by Bob and Joanne Wollershiem. They replanted the vines, starting with our oldest vineyard in Field 1. It's Marshall Foch grapes. They were planted in 1972, so they are 47 years old. They go into our oldest wine, Domaine Reserve. The 2017 vintage is actually being released today, so definitely try that out. In 1984, Philippe Picard came over as an agricultural exchange student, fell in love with Julie and never left. And then at the time, the winery wasn't particularly thriving, but in 1989, he created Prairie du Sac, which a lot of you are drinking. That really helped save the winery, keep us afloat, and we are celebrating 30 years of it today. And then in 2010, the laws were changed where you're allowed to distill on the same property as a winery. So we did start construction of we started making brandy rather, and then in 2015 we expanded into the distillery that's there now. They also have little separate mini tours over there if you guys have extra time today. You can check stuff out over there. So we'll just shuffle around the corner, talk a little bit about barrels. Spread out, look at the signs and stuff. So we are in our aging cellar. It is 3 out of 4 walls are underground. That does help keep it a little bit more of a consistent temperature down here. We don't want fluctuating temperatures with our wine being stored in here. The walls are also 2 feet thick, which does help insulate a little bit as well. On property, we have about 300 barrels in use, comprised of aging 8 different wines in them. They're all made of oak barrels, white oak barrels. We have particularly 2 types of oak. Wisconsin oak, which is used to give the wine a more kind of strong, robust backbone with aging. Gives it that tanniny flavor. Whereas the other one we use French oak, kind of softens the wine, gives it a nice, smooth, almost vanilla-y finish to it. Vines do have a lifespan, barrels do have a lifespan of about 4 to 6 vintages or agings of a particular wine in them. After that point, the tannin in the oak that gives off that flavor profile we're looking for is pretty much used up. At that point in time, they don't really benefit us to age wine in them at all. So we can do a few things with them. With the expansion of the distillery, there's certain distilling products that can sit in wine barrels that don't need any of that tannin. So we use a lot of them for that. Otherwise, we do have you guys on property who will make furniture out of them, or just like finish them, repurpose them, and stain them and stuff. There is a lot of maintenance that goes on to these barrels. When they're full, they're about 500 pounds, so we don't move them around when they're full. We do have a series of underground hoses that will run over to the fermentation. You can use that to fill an empty barrel with the pumps. It only takes about a minute and a half to get the 60 gallons out of there. The 60 gallons in each of these is about 300 bottles per barrel. We do go in occasionally and top them. You might have noticed a little topping keg around the corner. We do that because certain wine does evaporate, and we don't want any air in there as little as possible to prevent oxidization. That's what causes wine to go bad. Also, we have a humidifier. We'll wet down the barrels a lot to keep them swell. Otherwise, they could potentially leak.
The wine is fine before you put it in the barrel, right?
Yep. You could drink it before you put it in the barrel.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
wouldn't have the same flavor profile.
But it's fine. There's no residue in it at all, but when it goes in the barrel.
There could be sediment in it still from the fermenting process, but there's no like tannin or tartar in it, I suppose. Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions about the cellar or the barrels while we're down here?
Do you ever sell the barrels?
We do. So when they're retired, we will either some breweries buy them and they'll make like the vintage across the river. They bought some of our port barrels and they made a beer with it, so it tastes like a port barrel. You can really tell. So that's interesting. Otherwise, we have some available for purchase. They're retired barrels. They're just like finished and they have our logos on them. So yeah, if you're interested in that, definitely ask about it in the retail store. $500. But when we buy them brand new, they're like $1,200. So.
Where do they come from?
So
Where are they made?
They're made in California.
Oh, the barrels are.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, it's kind of interesting. So they cut down the staves, they age them here so they get the aromas of the air and anything in the property, or the terroir they call it, and then they'll send them. So we have a bunch of stacks of staves down by some shed, and then when they sit long enough, we'll send them to California and they'll fit them. Yeah.
I was familiar with back about 50 some years ago down by Belleville, they harvested all the white oak they could
Yeah.
and cut staves down there and hauled them to Tennessee.
Oh.
They made them into whiskey barrels.
Right.
But that was a big thing down there. I mean, they had
Oh, yeah.
many acres of staves piled up for a year, curing, and then they hauled them down to Tennessee.
All right. Well, we'll move on to the next part of the tour then. spread them out. We have some pictures and posters and an unpruned vine.
What kind of fertilizer do they use for your vines?
I don't have that news about that. It varies from year to year depending on the chemical components of the soil.
Triple 4 feet.
All right, so here we'll talk about our vineyards, the most important part of the winery, where all the vines grow. On property, we do have about 30 acres of planted vines. They consist of 6 different grape varietals. They are all French-American hybrids. They have to be French-American hybrids to be able to withstand our winters. They're very hardy vines. The 3 reds we have are Marshall Foch, Limoulo, and the Marquette is our newest one. And the 3 whites are the St. Pepin, the Cross, and the Brianna. So our oldest slope vines are the Marshall Foch on field 1. They go into our domain reserve, like I mentioned. They were planted in 1972, so they're 47 years old. You'd maybe think that that's getting kind of old for a vine, but they could actually potentially live up to about 100 years and still be producing grapes. And they say roughly the prime is 30 to 50 years, so it's kind of smack in the middle of that. It's resulting in some really nice domain reserves the past few years. Vines are on slopes for a few reasons. Air drainage, they get a nice breeze on there that helps keep the leaves nice and dry. We don't want them to accumulate too much moisture, otherwise they could get mildew and other damaging bacteria. They have good water drainage on the slope. Vines actually have a very extensive root system. They can go down as far as like 30 feet if they need to get water. So they really don't prefer to be sitting in a whole lot of it. So the angle of the slope combined with the composition of the soil, which is a really kind of sandy, limestoney loam mixture, really doesn't retain a whole lot of moisture, which you wouldn't really think is great for like a garden, but it works out really well for these vines. And the third and last reason is our slopes all face southwest, northwest, no, southwest. And then they get the most sun exposure possible, which is good for ripening. So right now, in a few weeks, we'll go out and start pruning. That is an unpruned vine over there. We'll actually take off about 80% of that, give it a nice haircut, trim it down to about 2 to 3 buds. We want about 50 buds on the vine total. We're a little bit behind on that. It's too cold still. We'd like to have started with that already. But once that starts, the buds will really take off and they'll start to grow. They grow ridiculously fast. And then we spend a lot of time making sure that the energy is focused on the T part of the vine, where we want all of our grapes to be grown, rather than they'll shoot out all these little buds along the side. We just knock those off. We train the new growth to the T that we want, and then we'll start removing leaves to make sure they have optimal sun exposure for ripening. And then in middle of August, early September is when we start to harvest. We do have a machine. We do a lot of it with that now, but a lot of our steeper slopes, as well as field 1, we still do by hand. We do not grow all of the grapes that we use in our wine production on property. We do, however, produce all of the wines on property. So we do get grapes sent to us from Washington and New York, and one from California. If it's a red grape, it'll come as a whole berry. We'll use the skins in part of the fermentation process. We'll talk a little bit more about that in there. Whereas a white grape doesn't have that tannic quality in their skins, so there's no need for them to ship us a whole white grape. We'll just press them there and send us the squeezed juice. So once we're done with harvesting, the vines lose all their foliage. They start to look like that. And then we'll go into the vineyards and we'll mulch it to help prevent erosion, as well as put some fertilizer back in the soil. Does anyone have any questions about the vineyards or the vines?
What kind of pH does the vine like?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Slate about that specifically.
Relatively
but
neutral, or
I think
I
it's
would
pretty
assume
neutral.
slightly acidic. Just a little.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about the pH.
I put lime on my grapes.
Do you? I've heard
To make
that
the
actually
soil
before.
sweeter.
Yeah.
Especially wild grapes like sweet soil.
Right.
If you drive around out in the country and you see lots of grapevines on the fence, but none of them will have grapes on them unless you find an area where there's a limestone knoll there, the grapes are growing on the fence.
Right, and we are our soil is heavily comprised of limestone, so it
Yeah,
definitely takes
everything
It
around
tends
here.
to be a little acidic
You're
because
right,
it's
probably.
lime.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Limestone is mushy.
It's sweet.
Am I wrong?
Are you?
Lime takes the acid out of the soil.
Huh?
Lime takes acid out of the soil.
Oh.
It makes the soil sweeter.
Yeah, I don't know about
Are you
They
anticipating a lot of
discovered that
winter
the
kill
pH
from the 40 below?
lowers.
They discovered that many, many, many moons ago when farmers couldn't raise alfalfa. But then all of a sudden they discovered beside gravel roads, the alfalfa would grow because of the dust from the alfalfa going over the field made the alfalfa grow.
They've
And
been,
I was
they've been
always
doing
told-
research in like Minnesota about the bud losses here, but you can compensate for it a little bit. You just don't take as much off when you're pruning and stuff, or like we won't knock off as many buds when we go back into the vine. But, no. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, we're going to move into the press room.
Yeah, just a little.
Yes, feel free to check out the presses. All right, so this is our press room. Once the grapes are harvested, we bring them up to here, and we'll drop them on, we'll weigh them, and then we put them on a sorting table. Then we have people who come through by hand, and they'll take out the unripe vines or ones that are bad, and we get rid of those. We don't want that. That'll mess with the potential sweetness of our grapes. And then once they go through the sorting table, we'll drop down into the destemmer. This will destem all of the grapes, shoots out the stems out here into a bin. The stems would give us kind of a bitter flavor in the wine, and we obviously do not want that. If it's a red grape when it comes in, we'll destem it, we crush it, we'll put it right into a tank. They have a tannin quality in the skins and the seeds, and we want to ferment on top of that for a while, extract as much of that flavor as we can, really get the flavor of the soil then. Whereas, like I said earlier, those white grapes don't have that, so we'll just push them right into our presses, and we press those. We have two presses here, a big one and a little one. We put the grape skins in there and we squeeze them out, get out as much of the juice as possible. And it does a really good job compared to when they used to stomp on them with their feet and stuff. So they'll be collected down in the bins underneath the presses, and then we'll pump them over into a tank, and then we can start fermenting.
Do they wash the grapes at any time?
No, not really. If we were to like close them down, we would kind of like dilute them a little bit. I don't think we want that.
Well, I've seen places where they, big operations,
Yeah.
they dump them in a tank and then the bucket elevator takes them up and goes into the crusher and simmer.
Huh.
And I always figured they're diluting their wine with
Right.
water.
I would think so,
But-
but yeah, we don't do that.
No.
Yeah.
Does all of your grapes come through this place?
Through here? Yep.
Everything comes through this one spot.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it all goes up there, and then we all weigh it, and we send it down to process it. Except for if it's a white grape that's sent to us from a different state, then it'll come as just juice, and then we'll just take it off the juice tanker and put it right into a filter.
Mr. Quick, be careful of that stick above your head.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so we can go over into that portion.
Robbie, are other states producing right now, or
As
are
in-
they, like California, you get some of your grapes from California?
Right. Are they producing grapes right now? I would imagine that, I don't know if they started pruning, but
Come in within about like 6 weeks of each other, so we have a shorter season here. All of our grapes are harvested about the 1st of September, and their grapes tend to be, because they have that longer growing season on the coast, they tend to come in like the end of September or the 1st week of October, sometimes even into mid to late October. We do sometimes end up
Then you're
crushing
waiting
a
another
couple.
year for that to
Do you get any
Yeah,
grapes
so
from
all
other
of our
countries?
growing seasons, no, all of our grapes are either they're custom grown for us by growers that we've been working with for about 30 years now, on the West Coast for the grapes that don't survive the winter here, like Pinot, like the Sangiovese, and then otherwise we grow everything around here.
So you don't receive any tankers at all from the other states until the end of September?
Right, so everything is either like some of our East Coast fruits, that's the hybrids that won't survive here, because it's too cold here. That comes in around the same time that our stuff starts coming in, because they have a similar growing season to ours. The stuff from the West Coast comes in a few weeks later.
Where are yours grown in the West Coast? I mean,
There's the
California.
Yakima
Storms
Valley
and
of
stuff,
Washington, and then there's a vineyard in Lodi, California for our carignan.
are any of these weather things hurting them at all, or?
Right now, it's too early to tell because the vines are still in dormancy, which is a blessing, really. So we'll just have to wait and see.
That wasn't anywhere near where the fires were.
No. luckily
Good.
not.
Good.
All right, I'll let Robbie take you over that night.
thank you. All right. So this is what we call our fermentation hall. This is a good majority of our tanks. We do, however, have another room over there called the big room. If you go over to the distillery, you can go through it. We have a lot of tanks over there also. We produce about 240,000 gallons of wine every year. That's about 1.2 million bottles every year. That does make us significantly the largest winery in Wisconsin, but there's some massive ones out in California. All of our tanks are stainless steel tanks. They're all made in Sauk City here. Depending on which type of grape you're fermenting, the fermentation process varies. Fermentation is basically the conversion of the sugar in the grapes to alcohol with the help of yeast. So you'll notice these little jackets around the tank. Those are called cooling jackets. We use those to regulate the temperatures of the wine during fermentation. If it's a red grape, we ferment it on the skins and it's a little bit warmer. We do that about 80 degrees for up to 2 weeks, try and get out as much alcohol and make it drier normally, typically, depending on the red. Whereas if it's a white grape, we ferment those a little colder at like 60 degrees for about a week. Let me check. So a lot of our determination on when to stop fermentation is done by taste. They do a lot of that in this lab back here, as well as when to stop aging in barrels. A lot of that is done by the palate of Philippe, Celine, and Vic. They really try to focus on getting as much of the terroir, they call it, the flavor of the soil that the grapes are grown in, out of the grapes. So on the tanks, there's a few little components. You might notice there's tasting valves. That's what these are. That's where you get your little sample out to determine how the wine's coming along.
Is there wine in these now?
Some of them do. They have these little, they're called sight tubes on the side. You can see if there's liquid in them. That one has some. I believe these small ones do. These two over here are open. They don't have anything in them. But I guess I didn't talk about ice wine. We also do have another additional barrel aging area. I'm sure you noticed there's no way to there's 300 barrels in that cellar. It's back there with the doors closed. You can see pictures of it right here, I guess. I guess the only thing I realized I forgot to mention was we do make ice wine. Like I said earlier, most of our harvesting is done during August and September. Ice wine, however, will leave about an acre of that typically We leave the grapes on the vine until early December. So that additional few months, they accumulate a lot more sugar in their grapes, as well as then we wait for it to be in between 5 and 15 degrees in early December. So it's really nice and frozen. And then all the water that's in the grape is frozen. So then we'll go out really early in the morning, pick those all by hand, and then when we bring them back here, we crush them. It's just like the sweetest juice ever. It's crazy. And
The problem is keeping them frozen so you can squeeze them.
right, and the longer you leave them on the vines, the more brittle they get. So good gusts of wind will come through and knock off some. We obviously don't
Cover the
want that.
vines?
We do. We put a netting over them for birds, and we actually did just put up where we had ice wine this year, this huge 10-foot deer fence. Fleet's a great hunter, but we got quite a few deer around here, and they really like grapes. But I suppose that just about concludes it, unless you guys have any questions. Be more than happy to answer those. Otherwise, make sure we'll go up into the winery store. There's quite a few demos going on today. Philippe's doing a winemaker's talk. There's a pruning demo by Bruce, our vineyard manager, as well as a bunch of things going on over in the distillery. You should definitely check that out. But if no one has any questions,
Or not a question, I talked to Philippe one time about deer.
yeah.
He said that they had electric fence around, he said what you have to do is in the spring, when the fawns are there, just have it shut off, go out there, put peanut butter on the line, turn it back on, then they'll come and lick on the peanut butter.
Right.
And then they won't come back.
We still do that. We try to kind of train them that there's that fence there, but I guess I didn't realize deer can jump like almost 11 feet in the air, so they'll hop. I watch them just hop over it, but what can you do? They're the worst. The problem is they damage the baby vines the worst. The ones that we're trying to grow up, they seem to really like eating those. So, but all right. Well then, you guys can follow me upstairs. Thanks for taking the tour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Waiting a couple minutes for see if any other people join us, and then we'll start walking. Do you guys have wristbands already? Did you check in at the line? All right, thank you. So did you all do the winery tour already? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you learn today?
That you have a lot of storage for a lot of wine,
Yeah.
a lot of Prairie Fumé.
That I plan on pairing shellfish with Prairie Fumé.
Good. Friday night fish fry.
I think it would be great with crab legs.
Yes, especially that.
It is pretty complicated. Well, it's both easy and complicated. You know, nature will do it, but as winemakers, we guide it.
Well, to get the wine you want.
Yeah. Hello. How are you two today? We're just waiting probably one more minute.
Big group. Did you have one at 10 o'clock?
We did. We've had groups every 10 minutes or so. Yeah, people that minutes. Hello. Hi. You can come on up. Do you have wristbands already?
Oh, no, where do we do
Nope,
that?
that's fine. Come on up here. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneak behind you.
Walking around.
Yeah.
Everybody going?
I don't know what he got, but it does look interesting.
He grabbed a bottle to go.
So Nicholas is gonna guide you.
Hi, Nicholas.
Thank you.
Hi.
Wave at everybody. You'll just start following him down into the tanks, please. And if anyone was interested in the cooking demo, it starts in just 2 minutes upstairs. Where is that?
Come back to this after.
Yeah, you can come back and do the tour if you're interested. It's up in the vineyard room. So you would go up to the winery store and they would send you right up there if you wanted to do that. All right.
Great. You guys want to follow me? Alright, excellent. Well, welcome to the open house. I'm Nicholas. I do everything here, most of what I'm told to do. Work a lot of production, work in the summer in the vineyards, otherwise helping winemaking. Further back. Excellent. Great. Filter back in here. It'll be a little bit quieter. So, did most people go on the winery tour already? Alright, so, excellent. So you guys already heard a lot about the history, but we'll still review that for those who haven't. So, the winery was founded in 1850s. Augustin Herazzi came over. He was a count from Austria. He's planted the first vines here. Those weren't quite hardy enough for the Wisconsin winters. As you guys know this year, we've had really cold winters. So those didn't last too long, and then this kind of right-hand man, Peter Kale, took over and built the old building that we see here, the old vintage winery that's up there, along with the house, kind of the cave on the hillside there, and planted more vines that were hardy enough for Wisconsin winters. And then the rest of the winery kind of got shut down with Prohibition and just kind of turned back into a farm. And then in 1972, Bob and Joanne Wollershiem moved in, bought the property, and replanted vines and started the winery again. And then in 1984, Philippe Cocard, the current winemaker here and owner, he came over from France as part of the agriculture exchange program and helped out Bob and Joanne kind of get things started more so, and kind of brought his French winemaking knowledge, and eventually married their oldest daughter, and here we are. So, something that Philippe and Bob really wanted to do is they always talked about distilling cognac, and they weren't allowed to because of state law in Wisconsin. You couldn't have a winery and a distillery at the same time. So, but that law changed in 2009 with a lot of kind of persuading by us and a couple other wineries in Wisconsin, and so got that law changed. So then the distillery kind of was born, or reborn, we like to say, because back in, what's the date on there? 1876, actually, there was brandy being distilled here, back when the Kales owned it. And then that, again, got shut down with Prohibition, along with the rest of the winery. So, we like to say that it's been reborn here, and kind of try to take that tradition up with us. So, you guys want to follow me back in here? You guys see the white, there's about 3 inches of foam on all these tanks. It's helped cool them, keeps the
white wine in this room is only distilled white wine, or not distilled. We make white wine here, and so that keeps the tanks cool at a consistent temperature and helps them settle more. And you also see these are also cooling jackets, help just control the temperature of the wine. If you have any questions, let me know. If I'm not speaking loud enough, let me know. Yes?
When you age the wine in here, do you have to fill it all the way to the top?
No, you don't have to. But for space storage, we tend to do that. Mostly, yeah.
So it doesn't oxidize if it's in the tank and it happens to be only half
We
full?
try to control the temperature a decent amount. Because of the fermentation of the yeast, it produces enough CO2 that kind of like pushes out all the oxygen. So if it's only half full, then theoretically that top half of the tank will be filled with mostly CO2. So there won't be too much oxygen left in there. It'll all be used up in the process of fermentation. Here we have about 30 acres of vineyards. Then we could also buy a lot from other local growers for us. Everything that we make is fermented and produced and bottled here. So that's semi-unique to us. Other wineries will buy either pre-made things, but we make everything and bottle it here. Because of Wisconsin's climate, unfortunately, we can't grow everything we would like to here. So we do get shipped some grapes and grape juice from New York State that's specially contracted to us, and we have a good relationship with those growers that work well with us. So we're going to keep on moving through here, and we'll kind of get into some more filtration and more brandy stuff. Distillery. Great, you guys are the biggest tour we've had today, so I'm excited. This is also my only tour of the day, so you guys get my best tour possible. Great. If you guys look over here, these will see what we use to filter some of the wine. So this is kind of newer, high-tech piece of equipment. There's tons of tiny little tubes in there. They're not quite microscopic, but almost. And so those kind of, all the wine will be able to filter through those, and all the kind of particles will get stuck in there. It kind of cleans itself, and so wine can come through and be filtered in one pass. This is an older piece of equipment that we still use for certain wines and some of our spirits. It's called a plate filter, and so then it's more like a really big coffee filter. Think like that, and we'll have a pump that kind of pushes or pulls things through certain filters depending on how many we want, how long it takes, and how clean we need things to be. And we're kind of going over a lot of the wine making stuff again, if you haven't heard it, because that's important for distillation. We use our winemaking knowledge and our winemaking expertise to make sure we can produce the best spirits possible, especially with the brandies, because brandy is distilled wine. So you wouldn't want to drink the wine. We usually pick the grapes early, and so they're high acidity, and so it just makes for a better brandy. Keeps things fresher. So follow me back to this room. Okay. Anyone have any questions so far? Excellent. So these tanks are here. All of our tanks are made locally in Sauk City, so just across the river from us. About fabrication. These are the biggest tanks we have, 7,000 gallons. So it's where we store all the wine or the spirits while we are waiting for them to be bottled. So after the tour, you guys can go downstairs and check out the bottling machine. It's pretty cool. It's a really cool piece of equipment. A lot of cool engineering that's into it. All of our spirits are aged in oak barrels, white oak. Yes, Tom? Yes. He's the master distiller right there, so. Yeah, so if you got any questions that I have no idea about, you can ask him. So he knows what he's talking about. So we toast our barrels. We don't toast them, we send them to Cooper, person who makes barrels, and they'll toast them. So they'll like a toaster. This was like toasted a little bit, gives it some extra flavor, brings out some of the caramel and vanilla flavors that are already in the oak. And then for our bourbon, we char them. And so it's like extra toasted. So it's like you put a toast and like turn it all the way. So,
Char barrel is on fire. So that's like your fast hot sear when you cook a steak or a burger on a gas stove or a charcoal grill. The toast is more like low and slow, kind of when you're smoking a rack of ribs. It takes about 30 to 60 minutes to toast the barrel. It takes about 30 to 45 seconds to char.
Have you ever considered doing the char process here? Could you?
Theoretically, we could char barrels. We're a big believer in what you're good at, and our coopers are very good at building barrels. It's actually surprisingly difficult to make a bunch of wood boards hold liquid. And so there are a handful of small people making barrels in their distilleries, but it's a very slow process. There's one place in Oregon who built a dedicated workshop just to make barrels, and they have a guy that's his full-time job. He made 60 barrels the first year that he was making barrels. That's how, just because he was teaching himself how to make barrels. He's doing a little over one a week. The companies we work with, Prairie du Sac, those are all hand-built in Napa Valley. During the slow time of year, they'll build 60 a day, and during the busy season, they'll build up to 90 a day. We also work with a company called Independent Stave out of Kentucky. They're in Lebanon, Kentucky. They actually have another cooperage in Lebanon, Missouri. At those cooperages, they have multiple lines at each facility. Their smallest line is 2,400 barrels. And so there's obviously the economies of scale, but there's also the specialization. And just like everything we do, we put so much attention to detail at how hot things are, what temperature we're using, what's their alcohol content, all that through our distillation process. Or in our winemaking, it's all about the gravity and the pH and the quality of that fruit. They do that for their wood. They know exactly this grain density in the stave is going to result in a tight grain barrel, which is good for this style of wine, versus this grain density is good for different barrels. So it's a whole other skill set that you have to really know a lot about.
That's why you
make them.
why you rely on the experts to go ahead and do that. Because
Exactly.
they know what they're doing.
Okay. We do have a sample of our press house branding up there that you guys can head on up and grab. All the full barrels on the wall here are actually press house branding. We have a few more press house brandings downstairs as well, but if you guys after this tour, you're welcome to go down and look at a bottle of wine as well as our barrel room downstairs. There's another 500 to 600 barrels down there.
How many bottles do you bottle in a year? How many bottles of the brandy do you bottle in a year?
Last year we bottled about 10,000 bottles of press house brandy. Just the press house.
Do you age the coconut?
Yep. We age everything here.
Good burn.
press house brandy is kind of engineered or designed to make brandy old fashions. Kind of with our Wisconsin heritage, we drink a lot of brandy old fashions. So, and then we also have the Cocard brandy is made with all Wisconsin products, Wisconsin oak. We season the staves here before we ship them out to California for them to be made. So we have some piles out back, and we're just some wood staves that are seasoning, kind of picking up the natural Wisconsin environments first before we ship them out there. So that's the Cocard brand. So that's the little bit finer sipping brand. Then after we're done with the barrels, we'll use them for experimental things, or sometimes we make furniture out of them. So you can see some of that in the winery gift shop.
A lot of people ask what we do with like the whiskey barrels. All of our whiskey barrels by law we can only use once for bourbon or rye whiskey, and so we actually sell all those. They're in pretty high demand for breweries. So like right now, our latest bottling in December, we sold 6 of those 8 barrels to brewery, Great Dane in Madison. They're aging a Russian Imperial Stout that they'll be releasing in April, which I'm really excited about. It's my favorite style.
So do you get like heads up on
Yeah,
that?
they have a craft beer week event, and they're actually going to be featuring that beer with our rye whiskey. So you can do like a shot and a beer with. So it's something I like a lot. So I'll be there. You guys are welcome to join us. We'll be posting about it on our social media as we get closer. But then also my buddy in town, we actually bowl together. I'm a terrible bowler. But we bowl together, and he runs John Joseph Coffee here in town, and he roasts his own beans. And so he actually ages the green beans in the used rye barrel to pull out the whiskey flavor, and then he roasts those beans lightly. But it cooks out all the alcohol, but when you're drinking it, it kind of tastes like you're drinking an Irish coffee. It's very tasty as well.
Which place is that?
John Joseph Coffee, he's got a little shop here in town. We actually do have his coffee. My friend Paul Hermes, the distiller. Great guy. You guys, welcome. Come on in, spread out as best you can. It's got a big group here today.
How long have you been doing this?
I've been here since August of 2014. Nicholas is my brother-in-law. I don't know, did he introduce himself?
Yeah, we said Nicholas.
Nick, this is Nicholas. So Nicholas's dad and mom are Philippe and Julie, our owners. And so Philippe is actually doing the next tour. And my wife Celine might have checked you guys in. So it's very much a family operation. So yeah. So this is our grain fermentation room. Unlike the tanks you saw in the other room, which were very large, you can see that all these tanks are large. They are an order of magnitude smaller. These are about 1,500 gallon tanks versus about 5,800 or 5,400 gallon tanks in the other room. The reason for that is because with our whiskey, we make that from grain, and we can store that grain in like the silo outside, and we can mill it and cook it to order, basically. When we make our brandy or we make our wine, that fruit is it's got sugar in it and it's got water in it, and it's ready to go. It's very ripe. If you buy grapes, you can't hold grapes in your refrigerator for 6 months. It's not going to work. So we have to make all that wine during harvest, and that's why we have so much tank capacity, because we have to make all the wine we're going to sell for the year and all the wine we're going to distill that year in about a 2-month period. In here, we'll weigh out about 1,000 pounds of grain, and we'll cook it into about 500 gallons worth of whiskey mash. 2.5, I call it 2.5 times a week, basically every other day. So we do Monday, Wednesday, Friday 1 week, and then Tuesday, Thursday the week after. And each one of those cooks will fill about 1 53-gallon whiskey barrel. And so if you guys want to take turns stepping up, be careful on that stool there. You can actually see 2 of our active fermentations going. But yeah, we'll be cooking and fermenting basically every week for the distillation the next week. The 3 little tanks down on the side there are our wine holding tanks. And so we'll make 40 to 50,000 gallons of wine during harvest for distillation. and then we're bringing over about 4,500 gallons at a time. So those three tanks hold 1,500 gallons, and then that big white tank in the hall holds another 3,000 gallons. And so we'll fill the stills from that. We go through about 500 gallons of wine that's 2.5 days to distill. Any questions on the cook process or on fermentation? The mash down there is a white corn bourbon mash. So it's about 75% white corn, 10% rye, and 15% malt barley. We work with Phil Marks, about my office here, Red Bars. They want to grow the white corn and the rye, so it's what we do for us. And malt barley we use because barley has, malted barley has, which is where the starting out is. We work with So if you've done our winery tour already, you went through our press room where they had the crusher, the destemmer, and the press. This still, actually, after wine harvest, that equipment would get put away and this still would get set up in that room. That was our first distillery back in 2010. We had what they called an alternating premise license. So we could either make spirits or we could make wine in the space, but the federal government does not allow you to do both at the same time. You can only do one or the other. So that's why these spaces here are all dedicated to distilling, so we can make all the spirits while they're making the wine over the winery building. We started in 2010 making our Pokar brandy, which was all Wisconsin native grapes, aged in Wisconsin oak barrels. We put about 100 gallons of wine in this still every day, and we bring it to a boil. The way we heat these stills now is with a copper coil that runs through there, and steam goes into that copper coil. As that steam gives up its heat, it becomes liquid again, and then that process is what actually heats the wine. It takes about an hour, hour and a half to warm up. As it's warming up, the boiling point will climb. Lower boiling point compounds will come across first. You'll get a lot of solventy type things like acetone, which is like nail polish remover, very undesirable. That we call the heads. We collect that. It's a very small amount of alcohol, but we collect that and we discard that. That does not make its way to the finished product. After the still is warmed up and it's going, you get past those heads, you start to get a really awesome flavor and a very high concentration of alcohol. For us, we're at about 75 to 78% alcohol to start when that beginning of that heads run or heart starts, up from the 10% alcohol we had in the wine. So as that alcohol content is coming across, most of the alcohol is coming across. You're leaving behind the water content in that wine, and as a result, the boiling point climbs. As the boiling point climbs, you get more and more heavier flavor compounds coming across. They're kind of sweaty, fatty, undesirable again. These are called tails compounds. So when the proof gets down about 120 proof, we keep a very close eye on it. Start to get a lot of those flavor compounds, and when it doesn't taste right anymore, we'll switch it over and start collecting our tails. We'll collect the tails. We'll collect about 12 to 15 gallons of hearts, which is going to be about 140 proof. That's the good stuff. That's what goes in the barrels. And then we'll collect about another 15 gallons of tails, which will only be 70 to 80 proof. And those tails will get added to the wine the next day. So the basics of distilling is you warm it up, and if you guys have cooked with wine, you know that the alcohol goes away. That's sad. So all this apparatus is designed to capture that alcohol vapor and concentrate it back down. so that the steam will come across, and you can see in here a copper coil. The product travels through that copper coil, and then there's cold water surrounding it, which causes that vapor to back down. This still here is made in Louisville, Kentucky. We like to use local as much as possible, as you guys heard with the grains. Louisville's not local, but it's practically closer than certain parts of the state. And so they are pretty much the only American still manufacturer. They've been making stills in Louisville since 1914, and it is a third or fourth generation family business. They make all the stills for guys like Jack Daniels or Jim Beam or those types of companies. So this is a very, very, very small still for them. We put about 250 gallons of whiskey mash in each day on this still, and it's the same process again. This still, you can see the brawn mixer on back. If you look inside, you'll see like it looks kind of like a boat motor. Stirs the mash. It prevents that grain from cooking onto the bottom of the still. That alcohol vapor rises up, and we have a couple of options. We can send it first through this botanical basket, which is the staging column there. That's how we make our gin. So we'll distill the alcohol through bed, juniper, lemongrass, and lavender to get those flavors out. Or we can send it to the column, and in that column, in between each window is a plate. And on each plate, it looks like 5 little mushrooms. They're called bubble caps. So the alcohol vapor has to go through those bubble caps up to each plate. As you go up more and more plates, the alcohol content will get cleaner. It will get higher in content, more neutral in taste. When we run all 6 plates, we get about 170 proof. In order to hit vodka strength, we need to hit 190 proof. And so you think, oh, well, you're almost there. You only need 1 or 2 more plates and you'll hit 190. You get diminishing returns. So every time you take a step, you take half as far each step you go, and you never quite get to pure alcohol. And so in order to make vodka, we'd actually need twice as much column. We need about 14 plates in order to get up to that 191 proof for vodka. The last guy on the right is our condenser. It's called a shotgun condenser, unlike these two, which a lot of people call worm tubs because it looks like a snake or a worm going through. The shotgun condenser is called a shotgun condenser because if you looked at it through the round side, it looks like somebody shot a shotgun through it. It's just a bunch of pipes where the vapor hits the outside of those pipes and cool water comes through those center pipes. Most important part of the still is the parrot on the front here. That's where the alcohol comes out. That's where we do all of our tasting. As you can see, we don't have any computers in this room. There's no automated valves in this room. Everything is operated 100% manually by myself or Nick. And we do everything by taste. And so all of our decisions are made that way. Any questions on distilling or anything else I might have forgotten to mention? No? All right.
Yeah, one question.
Yeah.
How do you know when you get past, I kind of watched that
Moonshiners.
Moonshiners, and you, how do they know when they get past that undesirable stuff that comes off?
We call it sensory, which is a big fancy word for you smell it and taste it. That's usually the best way. Some guys do it based off time. Some guys weigh it based off proof. They know, my proof curve looks like this, and at that point, we're going to do it there. We do it all by taste. So we smell it, we taste it, and you pick that thing up right as the still warms up. The very first glass you get off, it smells like pure nail polish. It's just very, very terrible. Where you place that cut, because you're talking about very, very small concentrations. Even in that first glass, you're talking about parts per million concentration. You're not talking about like 10% acetone. It's 0.1% acetone in there. But because it's such a pungent chemical, it just overpowers. And so the art of distilling is where you place those cuts. So if I'm trying to make a very neutral spirit, or I'm trying to make a whiskey that I'm only going to age for a very short period of time, I'm going to be more conservative with my cuts, and I'm going to wait longer. I'm going to take a very large heads cut to get a very nice, clean hearts component. If I'm making like a single malt Scotch style whiskey, I I might take a very short heads cut because I know it's going to sit in a barrel for 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 years. And a little bit of that compound in the overall mix when it goes into the barrel is barely detectable. And over time, it might add some good flavor as it reacts with the wood, reacts with the air, it develops and matures. And so a lot of people are scared of heads. They're not good. You don't want to drink a cup of heads, but it's not going to kill you. Like methanol is a compound that a lot of people worry about when it comes to distilling. Methanol and ethanol have almost the exact same boiling point. The difference between methanol and ethanol is you can't smell or taste methanol. And so it's very dangerous. But the solution to methanol poisoning, does anybody know? If you drink an ink toner, your kid drinks an ink toner, you take them to the hospital, you know what they do? They hook them up on an IV of ETOH or ethanol. Basically, they hook you up to vodka, and they put vodka in your bloodstream because your body prefers to metabolize ethanol over methanol. So any methanol that comes through in a properly produced spirit, your body's just going to reject it, and because there's 40% of the product is ethanol, or more. But a lot of when it comes to like moonshiners, if you make a still improperly, you're using lead-based solder or certain types of plastics that are not appropriate for still construction. Those heads compounds will just eat it up, and they'll put it in your spirit, and that's how you get poison. That's why we work with reputable still manufacturers. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to take you guys down to our bottling line. As you can check out our bottling line, we have some interactive displays down there and the rest of our 500 and some barrels. And then after that, you guys are welcome to take your time down there. After that, you can come back up. We do have some tastings in this room of our apple brandy, rye whiskey, and vermouth. And then we also have 3 featured cocktails. One actually made with the Prairie du Sac, the 30th anniversary of Prairie du Sac, brandy old fashioned, and the Rattler, which is a grapefruit and rye. We'll head out this back door here. The steam valve on?
No, the tank valve.
Oh yeah, we're pretty careful about that.
How long do you have to go to school to do this, or it's just?
About 6 weeks.
But that one lost you. You did it back way. You did.
bottling water is a demonstration, but basically the flow of it is the bottles will get placed on the conveyor. They'll make their way through to the first station where they get rinsed. Just before filling with wine or spirit, they would get sparged with inert gas, so there's no oxygen in the headspace of the bottle. So they get filled, and then they either get corked, screw capped, or a bar top for our spirits. Once that's done, it'll make its way through to get either a tin capsule, a PVC capsule that would be heat shrunk on, and a label here. So the last station is 2 people, quality control, checking everything is there. get this thing running and send a few bottles through.
But chemical engineering, by and large, for what we do on a day-to-day basis is not super practical because there's so much of what I do that I do literally everything. If I worked at Jim Beam, I would just be looking at one process. I would just be in charge of the engineering aspect of it. And so my wife, who registered a lot of you, Celine, she has a master's in food science. So she's like our scientist. And we all have that scientific inclination, but like I'm not a culinary trained scientist. But I do have my certificate in distilling, which is an examination, basically to show that you met qualifications. When I took my certificate in distilling, they did not offer at the time a master distiller's program. Now they do. For me to go from my certificate to a master's now, I would have to do 3 years of diploma study. I have to do tests every year for 3 years. And then I can start my master's.
Okay, so it's not 7 days a week.
Oh, no, not at all.
Freeze mortified, like for instance, on it's 40 below, I took 20 gallons of ice.
talk about